Now let's go over part 6 of today's lesson, not as something as. Until now, this entire lesson, we've been talking about differences. When two things are different, you use the comparative structure with ER more and than. For example, Joey is 14, Skylar is 12. Joey is older than Skylar. Skylar is younger than Joey. When two things are equal, you can use the same followed by a noun. You can have a compound subject with and, or a simple subject with as at the end for the second person or thing. For example, Skylar is 12, Oliver is 12. Skylar and Oliver are the same age. Skylar and Oliver is a compound subject. Or Oliver is the same age as Skylar. Jasmine's game is on Saturday. Aaron's concert is on Saturday. Jasmine's game and Aaron's concert are on the same day. Compound subject. Or Jasmine's game is on the same day as Aaron's concert. Lokilani is a college dormitory. Bob and Taka both live in Lokilani. Bob and Taka live in the same dorm. Bob lives in the same dorm as Taka. All of these show the same person, same thing, something that is the same. Now, same must always have the in front. The same. Same can only be followed by as. The same can also be followed by pronouns one or ones. The same one, the same ones. Now, if you need to use an adjective or adverb to show similarities, not just a noun, you can use the pattern as something as. The first as is an adverb and goes before the comparative word. As tall, as quickly, as many. But notice the comparative word is the base form. You don't add ER, you don't use more with as. The second as is similar to than. It can be a preposition, it can be a conjunction, and it is followed by the second person or thing. So, my friend has a huge SUV. It's the same size as my first apartment. My friend's SUV is as big as my first apartment. A baby's skin is very smooth. Silk is very smooth. A baby's skin is as smooth as silk. You can also use as something as with nouns and verbs. To show that something is close but not exactly the same, add almost. To emphasize the fact that they are the same, use just. We sold 3,000 tickets last year. We sold 2,950 tickets this year. We sold almost as many tickets as last year. A baby elephant can weigh 90 kilograms. American men weigh 90 kilograms. A baby elephant can weigh just as much as an average adult man. Now, when you're talking about nouns, the comparative word depends on whether the noun is countable or uncountable, and the number or amount is considered large or small. With than and countable nouns, you use more people, fewer people. But with as many people as few days as. Uncountable nouns, as much money as little homework as. So again, be careful with countable and uncountable. You can also use this as structure to show maximum effort. Use the phrases as possible or as I can at the end of the statement. The soldiers worked all morning to make their living quarters as clean as possible for inspection. Maximum effort. I go to the pool as often as I can, but my schedule doesn't allow me to go as often as I would like. Again, I try, but sometimes I can't. I'm sure my essay wasn't perfect, but I spent a lot of time editing, so I would make as few mistakes as I could. The company has made every effort to lower energy costs and spent a lot of money making their buildings as green as possible. Size is not a problem. We can make the banner as big as you need. Now, another way to show difference is with the expression not as something as. Not as tall as is basically the same as shorter than. Notice you don't mix ER, as, and than. Okay? ER goes with than, as is followed by the base form. For example, winter is a bit colder in Toronto than in Hokkaido. Winter in Hokkaido is not quite as cold as winter in Toronto. First class seats are much more comfortable than economy class seats. Or economy class seats are not nearly as comfortable as first class seats. Same thing. Now, to show a small difference, use the adverb not quite. Close, but not quite. To show a very big difference, use the adverb nearly or not nearly. Use standard negative sentence formation, including don't, doesn't, and didn't. I have more homework this year than last year. I didn't have as much homework last year as this year. I could run much faster in my 20s than I can now. I can't run nearly as fast now as I could in my 20s. The Cowboys have won more games than the Eagles. The Eagles haven't won as many games as the Cowboys. Now, usually there are 2 or even 3 ways to write the same comparative sentence, using more or er than, less than, not as, something as. So let's look at the basic patterns. Er adjectives. One thing is taller than another. You can say the same thing. One thing isn't as tall as another. Switching the two things. Or you can use the opposite adjective with er. B is shorter than A. You could even say B isn't as short or A isn't as short as B. Lots of possibilities. To decide which pattern is best, think about 2 things. Which of the 2 things is more important, A or B? Whichever is more important, put that at the end with than or as. Or which adjective is more positive or more accurate? Use that adjective. For example, Skylar is 13 and already he is taller than his mother. Mother here is more important. Skylar isn't as tall as his father yet. In this case, father is more important. Now, in this example, short isn't a good choice since you are comparing height and getting taller, growing. What do you do with adjectives and adverbs that need more? Well, start with A is more expensive than B. Switch the two things. B isn't as expensive as A. Notice that more disappears. Don't use more with as. You can also say B is less expensive than A. I could even use the opposite adjective, cheaper. B is cheaper than A. But I'm not a big fan of that choice. I'm not a fan of cheaper. I'll explain why in a second. Try to keep your statements as positive as possible. Avoid descriptive words with negative meaning. Even if it's grammatically correct, it is not good if it makes someone feel bad. For example, the other team was better than us today. All right, we were both good, but they were better. This is a positive statement. I like it. We were worse than the other team. We weren't as good as the other team. Not such a fan because, again, this makes me feel bad. Worse. Not as good. Okay? That's the same reason why cheaper is maybe not a good choice for B is cheaper than A. Because cheap can have the idea of poor quality. Therefore, low price. So maybe cheap is a little too negative. Worse is definitely negative. So keep it positive. So let's look at some examples. Average rent in Manhattan is $4,000. Average rent in Brooklyn is $3,000. Manhattan is more expensive than Brooklyn. Brooklyn isn't as expensive as Manhattan, but they are both expensive. Brooklyn is cheaper than Manhattan? No, I don't think so, because neither is cheap. I got a 95 on the math test. Jade got a 97. Jade got a higher score than me on the math test. My score on the math test wasn't as high as Jade's. Both of those are fine because they're both high scores. However, I got a lower score on the math test than Jade? No, because 95 is still a very high score. Isaac can type 90 words a minute. Penny can type 100 words a minute. So, Penny can type even more quickly than Isaac. Isaac can't type as quickly as Penny. Both of these are fine. However, Isaac types more slowly than Penny? No, because 90 words a minute is still very fast. So you wouldn't use slowly in this situation. Niseko got 15 meters of snow in 2019. It got 14 meters of snow in 2020. So Niseko got more snow in 2019 than in 2020. Niseko got less snow in 2020 than 2019. Niseko didn't get as much snow in 2020 as in 2019. All of these are fine because there's no positive, no negative. Nobody's going to get their feelings hurt. Finally, Penn State has 45,000 students. Temple University has 27,000 students. Penn State has more students than Temple University. Temple University doesn't have as many students as Penn State. Both of these are fine. However, Temple University is smaller than Penn State. No, because 27,000 students is still a very large school. The adjective small just doesn't make sense here. All right, I think that is more than enough for this section. Go on and do the exercises, and I'll see you in the final section of this very long comparatives lesson.